The tie didn't fit. Daniel Mercer stood in front of the bathroom mirror and pulled at the collar for the fourth time in 2 minutes. The tie was navy blue, the only one he owned, and it had belonged to his father. The knot sat crooked no matter how many times he redid it. He gave up. A small voice from the hallway. He turned. Lily stood in the doorway in her pajamas, holding a stuffed rabbit with one ear torn at the seam, his fault, from a washing machine incident 2 Christmases ago. She was 7 years old and had his eyes. Dark brown. Careful, the kind of eyes that watched everything. "You look weird," she said. "Thanks, sweetheart. Why are you wearing that?" He crouched down to her level. "Daddy has to go out tonight, just for a couple hours. Mrs. Patterson is coming to stay with you." Lily wrinkled her nose. "Mrs. Patterson smells like cats. She only has 2 cats. She smells like more than 2. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head and straightened. In the mirror again, a man in a collared shirt 3 years out of style, a crooked tie, shadows under his eyes from the overnight shift 2 nights ago. He worked building maintenance at the Hargrove Tower on 5th 12-story commercial complex, HVAC systems, electrical panels, the unglamorous skeleton that kept everything running. He was good at it. He kept his head down, did the work, went home to Lily. That was enough. That had been enough for 4 years. He picked up his phone from the counter. The message was still there, from this morning. "Daniel, I need you to do something for me. I'll explain tonight. S. Wentworth, Sophia Wentworth, CEO of Wentworth Capital, worth somewhere north of $2 billion. And, inexplicably, the person who owed Daniel Mercer a debt she had never stopped trying to repay. 18 months ago, he'd been finishing a late-night shift in the Hargrove Tower parking structure when he heard the tires. A black town car had come down the ramp too fast and clipped the concrete barrier. The car had spun. He'd pulled the driver out through a shattered window before the engine caught fire. The driver had been unconscious. The passenger in the back had been Sophia Wentworth, unharmed but shaking, still clutching her briefcase like a shield. She had looked at him through the smoke. He had looked back. Neither of them had said anything for a long moment. Then she said, "I don't forget things." He said, "I don't need anything." She had called him 6 times in the weeks that followed. He had ignored 5 of them. The 6th time, he'd answered by accident while trying to lower the volume. That was how it started. Not friendship, exactly. Something more uncomfortable than that. An obligation she wore like a second skin, and a refusal he wore like armor. He had not expected tonight. The call had come at 3:47 the afternoon, while he was replacing a light fixture on the 8th floor. "I need you to go to dinner," she said. No preamble. "Caslon's, 8 o'clock. He'd laughed. "Caslon's doesn't take walk-ins. I made a reservation." "Sophia, just dinner, Daniel." "One evening. I've arranged everything." He had started to say no. The word was fully formed in his mouth. Then she said, "Please." He had never heard Sophia Wentworth say please to anyone. He went. Now, standing in his bathroom in a crooked tie with Lily watching him from the doorway, he still wasn't sure why. Maybe because 4 years of saying no to everything had started to feel like a different kind of prison. Maybe because somewhere beneath the routine, the shifts, the school pickups, the grocery lists, the careful, small life he had built there was something that had been holding its breath for a very long time. He straightened the tie one more time. It was still crooked. He left it. Sophia Wentworth's office occupied the entire 43rd floor of the Caldwell building, and it looked exactly like her. Precise, unsentimental, and expensive, in a way that made no effort to announce itself. She had called Daniel from the window. The city stretched below her like a blueprint. She hung up and turned around. Her assistant, Marcus, was standing in the doorway with a tablet and an expression of mild alarm, the expression he wore whenever she did something that didn't appear on the day's agenda. "Cancel the Sato call," she said. "It's been rescheduled twice already." Then reschedule it a 3rd time. She crossed to her desk. And I need the Caslon's reservation confirmed for 2. Private booth, east side. Marcus made a note. And the guest? She sat, picked up a pen. He waited. She did not elaborate. After Marcus left, she opened the bottom drawer of her desk and took out a photograph. Not a framed one, a photograph that had been folded and unfolded so many times, the creases were soft as cloth. 2 people in it, a man and a woman, mid-20s, laughing at something off camera. The woman was recognizable, if you knew what Sophia Wentworth looked like before she stopped laughing in photographs. The man was harder to place. She had found Daniel Mercer through a private investigator, 3 years before the accident. She had hired the investigator for a different reason. She had been looking for information about a business associate and had stumbled across something she wasn't looking for. A name, a file, a connection she hadn't understood until she sat with it for a long time. By the time she understood it, it was almost too late to fix. She folded the photograph and put it back. Tonight was not about debt. Not entirely. Tonight was about the thing she had promised herself she would do when the moment was right. And the moment had been circling for months, and she was tired of waiting. She had told him it was a date. She had told the other person the same thing. Neither of them knew who was waiting on the other side of the door. That was, she understood, a brutal thing to do. She had done brutal things before in the name of efficiency. She had fired people, restructured departments, cut deals that hurt individuals to save institutions. She knew how to make the call no one else would make. This was different. This was personal. She sat in the back of her car as it moved through the city and pressed her hand flat against her knee to keep it from moving. Marcus, in the front seat, did not look back. "If this goes wrong," she said, mostly to herself. He said nothing. He was very good at that. She looked out the window at the lights. "I'm not just repaying a debt," she thought. "I'm trying to put something back that I helped break." That was the truth she hadn't said on the phone. The truth was, 4 years ago, when everything fell apart between Daniel and the woman he loved, when the phone calls stopped and the door closed, and the city swallowed them both, Sophia Wentworth had known why. She had known, and she had said nothing. And she had lived with that for 4 years. Tonight, she was going to stop living with it. Caslon's was the kind of restaurant where the lighting was designed to make everyone look like they had somewhere better to be. Daniel arrived 8 minutes early, which felt right for a maintenance worker and wrong for a place where a single appetizer cost what he spent on Lily's school supplies for a month. The maitre d' looked at his shirt, pressed but not new, the collar showing its age at the fold, and took a single, almost imperceptible breath before composing himself. "Name?" he asked. "Mercer." "Wentworth reservation." Something shifted. The maitre d' became suddenly, aggressively pleasant. "Of course, Mr. Mercer." "This way, please." The dining room was tall-ceilinged and low-voiced, the way expensive places always were, as though money required a certain kind of quiet. Chandeliers made of something that wasn't glass but looked better than glass. Tables set with enough silverware to be confusing. The other guests wore things that fit. Daniel followed the maitre d' to a corner booth. He sat. The menus were leather-bound and had no prices, which meant either everything was free, unlikely, or everything was expensive enough that printing the number was considered rude, almost certain. He ordered water. He looked at the door. He had been there 22 minutes when he heard a small voice behind him. He turned. Lily stood 3 feet away, clutching her rabbit, wearing her coat over her pajamas. His heart performed a complete mechanical failure. "Lily." "How?" "Mrs. Patterson's car broke," Lily said, with the calm authority of someone reporting weather. "She called you, but you didn't answer. So she called the restaurant. And they said you were here. So we took a taxi." He stared at her. "You took a taxi. Mrs. Patterson was with me. She's at the front." Lily climbed into the booth seat across from him with the decisive energy of someone who had solved the problem and was now ready for dinner. She opened the leather menu. Her eyes went wide. "There are no pictures." "That's because he stopped." He looked toward the entrance for Mrs. Patterson, and he saw her instead. She was standing just inside the door. She hadn't seen him yet. She was handing her coat to the maitre d' and saying something that made him nod and gesture toward the room. She was wearing a dress the color of deep water, dark blue, simple, and her dark blonde hair was pinned back the way it always was when she was nervous, loose at the sides, like she'd started and then second-guessed it. He knew that hair. He had watched her pin it in the mirror of a studio apartment on the east side of the city 7 years ago, running late for a graduate seminar she always pretended to hate but always talked about for an hour after. Her name was Claire Donovan. He had loved her completely, which was not something he said easily or ever anymore. She turned. She saw him. The room did not actually go quiet. The murmur of 40 other conversations continued without interruption, but something in the space between them went absolutely still, like the moment before a window breaks. She didn't move. Neither did he. Then Lily looked up from the menu. "Who's that?" Lily asked. He didn't answer. Claire walked toward the table slowly. The way you approach something you're not sure is real. Her expression was doing 3 things at once: recognition, shock, a kind of careful devastation that she was working very hard to keep controlled. She stopped at the edge of the booth. "Daniel," she said. One word. His name. But the way she said it made it sound like she had been saving it up for a very long time. "Claire," he said. Lily looked between them with the analytical gaze of a 7-year-old who understood more than she was supposed to. She set down the menu. "Do you know my dad?" Claire's eyes dropped to Lily. Something happened in them, a flicker of something vast and complicated that passed through and was gone. "Yes," Claire said. "We knew each other a long time ago." "How long?" "A very long time." Lily considered this. "Before I was born?" "I wasn't born for a while," Lily said, with the confidence of someone who had established this fact and found it important. "Dad says I was the best surprise." Claire said nothing for a moment. When she looked up at Daniel, her eyes were wet at the corners. She blinked it back. "May I sit down?" she asked quietly. He should have said no. He should have stood up, found Mrs. Patterson, taken Lily home. He should have done the sensible thing that 4 years of careful living had trained him to do. Remove himself from situations that could break open the things he'd sealed shut. He said, "Yes." There was a long silence after she sat down. Not uncomfortable, worse than uncomfortable. The kind of silence that has too much inside it to be broken easily. Mrs. Patterson appeared at the edge of the dining room, found him with her eyes, and gave a small, helpless wave. He mouthed "It's okay" and held up 5 fingers. She found a chair near the entrance and settled into it with the expression of someone who has survived many inexplicable evenings. Lily had returned to the menu with philosophical acceptance. Daniel looked at Claire across the table. 4 years. The math was involuntary. 4 years since the last time he'd seen her face in a doorway, her expression closed and final, saying, "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. I can't explain." He had stood there holding his keys and not understanding. He had called for 3 weeks. Then he stopped calling. Then the year that followed, which he didn't think about. Then, "Lily, you didn't know," she said. "That's what I need you to understand first. You didn't know, and I didn't tell you, and I have thought about that decision every single day since." He waited. "There's a reason I left," she said, "and it was not what you thought." Her voice was very steady, the steadiness of someone holding something up with both hands. "Then tell me," he said. She looked at Lily. He looked at Lily. Lily was pointing at an item on the menu and saying, quietly and with great satisfaction, "This one has a truffle. I don't know what a truffle is, but it costs a lot." Daniel said, softly, "Claire?" She looked back at him. "Tell me," he said again. She took a breath. "Your daughter?" she said. "How old is she?" He felt something cold move through his chest. 7, he said carefully. "She's 7. Claire nodded. She was not looking away. She held his gaze with something that was almost apology and almost revelation, and was entirely neither. "Daniel," she said. I need you to hear what I'm about to say and not walk out of this restaurant. The cold thing in his chest tightened. I never stopped loving you, she said. And I never left because I wanted to. She started from the beginning. Her family, the Donovans, were not the quiet, middle-class unit she'd described to him when they were together. She had simplified them deliberately, the way you simplify a complicated equation to make it workable. The truth was that the Donovans had money, old money, the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need to be loud because it's structural, foundational, woven into institutions and boards and social arrangements that outlast individual people. Her father, Warren Donovan, had a specific vision for her life. Not cruel, she was careful to say. Not cruel, but absolute. When he discovered she was serious about Daniel, not a passing thing, serious. The kind where you start unconsciously measuring square footage and imagining a future, he made a calculation. Daniel was talented. Daniel was, by any honest measure, exceptional. But Daniel was not from the right world, and Warren Donovan did not traffic in exceptions. He had given her a choice that wasn't a choice. Walk away from Daniel. Or watch what happened when Warren Donovan decided to make someone's life difficult. Not violent, the Donovans didn't operate that way. Contractual, systematic, the kind of difficulty that presents as coincidence. A licensing issue here, a reference that doesn't come through there, a door that closes so quietly you never hear the click. He would have destroyed everything you were trying to build, Claire said. Your engineering license. The consulting work you were starting. He had the connections to make you unemployable in this city within 6 months, and you would never have been able to prove it was deliberate. Daniel was very still. I know how that sounds, she said. It sounds like you made a decision for me, he said. Yes, she didn't flinch. I did, and I have spent 4 years knowing that was wrong. I made the decision I thought would protect you, and I never gave you the chance to decide for yourself. She pressed her hands flat on the table. I know that. I'm not asking you to forgive the decision. I'm asking you to understand that the only thing driving it was that I couldn't watch him take everything from you. Lily had fallen asleep against the wall of the booth. Sometime in the last half hour, her rabbit had ended up on the table beside the bread basket, which felt appropriate. Daniel looked at his daughter. The year after you left, he said, quietly. I was in a bad place. I know. You know, Sophia told me. She found me 8 months ago. She told me what the year after was like. She told me about Lily. A pause. About how Lily came to be. He waited again. He had become very good at waiting. I don't know the full story of that, Claire said carefully. And I'm not asking, but Sophia said she said there were things I needed to hear directly, and things you needed to hear. She looked at him steadily. She said she'd been holding on to information that wasn't hers to hold. That she'd known about my father's arrangement for almost 2 years before the accident. That she'd found out through a business contact and had thought she stopped. She had thought it wasn't her place, and then it became her place. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. So, the dinner, he said. The reservation, the setup. She didn't tell me it was you. She told me she wanted me to meet someone. Someone I had a history with. Claire almost smiled. I suspected, but I didn't let myself believe it until I walked in. He looked at the sleeping child beside them, the tight curl of her fist, the torn rabbit ear. Lily, he said softly, is mine. I know, Claire said, her mother and I. He stopped. He chose the words with care. It was a brief thing. She left the city. She told me by letter. I have raised Lily alone since she was 8 months old. I know, Claire said again. There was a long pause. There's something else, Claire said. Something I haven't told you yet. He looked up. My father, she said. He knows I'm in the city. He found out 2 months ago that I'd been in contact with Sophia. He doesn't know about tonight. But he will. She held his gaze, and when he does, he will try again. He is not someone who accepts that his arrangements have expired. Something shifted in Daniel's expression. Not fear. Something older than fear, and quieter. "How old is he?" he asked. 73. "And still?" "Still," she said. He has never stopped believing he was right. The booth had become a kind of sealed world. Outside it, Caslon's continued its expensive murmur. Plates arrived and were mostly ignored. Mrs. Patterson had fallen asleep in her chair near the entrance, her chin tipped forward with the dignity of someone who had decided to treat this as a scheduled rest. Lily slept against the wall with her rabbit. Daniel and Claire sat across from each other in the particular silence of people who have said important things and are now living inside the aftermath. He had not spoken for several minutes. She was letting him have the silence. This was one of the things he remembered about her, the way she understood that some thoughts needed space to become words, and she never pushed the process. She had always been patient in the specific way of people who are turbulent on the inside and have learned, carefully, not to let it show. "When Sophia found you," he said finally. "What was she? What was the first thing she told you?" Claire considered. "She told me about the accident. The parking structure. She told me that the man who pulled her out of the car was someone I used to know." She paused. She said she'd recognized his name on the maintenance company roster, that she'd done some research, and the more she found, the more she realized she had a responsibility she'd been avoiding. "What kind of research?" "She found the paper trail," Claire said. "The consultations my father arranged with his associates. The conversations that preceded your licensing application being delayed. The pattern." She met his eyes. "It wasn't accidental, Daniel. None of it was accidental. The engineering license that took 14 months to process. The contract that fell through at the last moment. The reference from your graduate supervisor that somehow arrived incomplete. He absorbed this without expression. "I suspected," he said. "At the time. But I couldn't, there was nothing to point at. That was deliberate." He nodded slowly. "And you didn't know?" "Not the specifics. I knew my father was capable of it. I didn't know he'd already begun." Her jaw tightened. "By the time I found out the full scope, you had moved on. You had a life that was working. I thought." She stopped. "I thought reopening it would only do damage. I told myself that was the reason. But it wasn't the only reason." She looked at him. "It was also," she said quietly, "because I was afraid of what you'd say to me." He held her gaze. Lily stirred in her sleep. She made a small sound, shifted, and settled again with her cheek pressed against the cushion. Her hand had found her rabbit without waking. He watched his daughter for a moment. Then he said, "I don't blame you for the decision you made. I wish you'd made a different one. But I understand why you made the one you did." He paused. "What I don't understand is why your father would come back now. What does he want?" "Control," she said simply. "He has a business arrangement he wants me to be part of. A merger. The other party has requirements. Social requirements. My father wants me settled, in his definition of the word." She said it without heat. "Just fact. He's been putting pressure on since last spring. I've been avoiding it. But avoiding it has a ceiling, and if you don't comply, then he finds other pressure points." A silence. "Sophia knows about all of this?" Daniel asked. "Sophia," Claire said, "knows more about my father's operations than he would be comfortable with. She's been collecting that information for 2 years." Something moved in Daniel's expression. "Why?" "Because," Claire said, "Sophia Wentworth has reasons of her own to want Warren Donovan to be held accountable." She folded her hands on the table. "She and my father have history. Business history. She lost something, years ago, because of a deal he engineered. She's been patient. She's very good at being patient." A pause. He was quiet. "She's playing a longer game," he said, "and we're part of it. We were always part of it," Claire said. "But she's not wrong about what we need. And she's not wrong about what he's capable of if left uncontested. Lily opened her eyes. She looked at Daniel. She looked at Claire. She yawned. An enormous, theatrical, 7-year-old yawn. "Are you done talking?" she asked. He almost laughed. The laugh surprised him. It came from somewhere he hadn't visited in a while. "Not quite," he said. Lily accepted this. She picked up her rabbit and regarded Claire with the careful assessment of someone taking a very important measurement. "What's your name?" Lily asked. "Claire," she said. "Do you like rabbits?" Claire looked at the rabbit, lopsided, one ear torn. "Loved completely beyond all reason." "Very much," she said. Lily held the rabbit out across the table. "You can hold him," she said. "But be careful with his ear. It's sensitive." Claire took the rabbit with both hands, gently, and held it with an expression that was trying very hard not to be what it was. Daniel watched her. Something in him that had been locked for a long time shifted in its frame. It took Warren Donovan 47 hours to find out. Daniel didn't know the specifics of how. He suspected it was through the same web of professional and social connections that had made him untouchable and invisible for 30 years, the network of people who owed him things, or feared him, or both, which in his world often amounted to the same. He found out on a Thursday morning, 2 days after Caslon's. The first sign was a phone call to Daniel's employer, anonymous, professional, suggesting that certain irregularities had been noted in a recent background check, and perhaps a review of employment records was warranted. The call was logged. Daniel's supervisor mentioned it to him with an expression of embarrassed apology. The second sign was a registered letter delivered to Daniel's apartment building, addressed to him, from a law firm he did not recognize, citing a contractual clause in a lease he had never signed. The third sign was a man in a dark coat who stood on the sidewalk outside Lily's school at pickup time and watched without approaching. That third one was the one that clarified things. Daniel called Sophia that evening from the parking lot of a grocery store while Lily sat in the back seat eating a granola bar. "He moved faster than I expected," Sophia said. "The man outside the school. He won't touch her. That's not Warren's style." "It's a message. I understand what it is," Daniel said. He kept his voice level because Lily was 8 feet away. "What I need to know is what comes next." Sophia was quiet for a moment. "I've been preparing for this. The documentation I have on his business practices, the paper trail on your licensing delay, the communications around Claire's situation, 2 other cases in the last decade where he used similar methods, it's enough. But it needs to be used correctly. If we go directly to the press or to regulators without preparation, he has enough goodwill to weather it. So what's the play?" "There's a board meeting," she said. "Donovan Capital. 3rd week of next month. Warren is presenting a restructuring proposal that 3 other board members have already privately said they oppose. He needs their votes. He needs to appear unassailable." A pause. "If certain information becomes available to those board members before the meeting, not publicly, privately, through appropriate channels, they have both the incentive and the leverage to demand accountability." Daniel was quiet. "You've been building to this," he said. "For how long?" "Long enough." He watched Lily through the rear window. She had finished the granola bar and was explaining something to her rabbit with great seriousness. "Claire," he said. "Where is she in this?" "She's willing," Sophia said. "She has her own documentation. Letters from her father that make the arrangement explicit. She's been sitting on them because she was afraid of what using them would cost. And now, Sophia said, she's decided the cost of not using them is higher." He looked at his daughter. "The man outside the school," he said. "Won't happen again. I've already made certain calls." "I want to be part of it," Daniel said. "Daniel, not peripheral. Part of it." He kept his voice quiet and very even. "I have spent 4 years rebuilding my life piece by piece. I have Lily. I have work that I'm good at. I have a small apartment that is clean and warm and has enough food in it. I built that." He paused. "I won't watch someone else protect it while I stand outside. I need to be in the room." A long silence. "All right," Sophia said. There was a version of Daniel Mercer that the maintenance coveralls and the crooked tie had been covering for 4 years. Not hidden, exactly. More like set aside, the way you set aside a tool you're not currently using, not because you don't know how to use it, but because the current job doesn't require it. He had a master's degree in systems engineering from a school that was difficult to get into. He had spent 2 years working for a defense contractor on infrastructure resilience projects work that required security clearance, high-level analytical thinking, and the ability to hold very large amounts of complexity in mind simultaneously. He had, before the licensing delays and the carefully engineered professional setbacks, been on a trajectory that looked quite different from where he had ended up. He had not lost those capabilities. He had simply stopped using them. It turned out they had been keeping themselves warm in the interim. Sophia met him in her conference room 3 days after their parking lot conversation. She had a large screen, 3 folders of documentation, and Marcus standing at the door with coffee. She went through the information she had on Warren Donovan's business practices over the past decade. Daniel listened with the particular quality of attention he brought to complex systems, the kind where you're not just collecting information sequentially but mapping it. Building a structural model in real time, identifying load points and failure modes. 40 minutes in, he said, "He's overextended on the meridian side." Sophia looked at him. "Explain." He pointed to a column of figures in the 3rd folder. He's been using Meridian Holdings as a buffer transactions that look like standard investment activity, but are actually structured to obscure where certain funds originated. If the board members you're targeting have fiduciary responsibility for pension-connected accounts, and they can see the Meridian exposure, he stopped. They're not just politically motivated to oppose him. They're legally exposed if they don't. Sophia studied him for a long moment. "You understood that," she said, "in 40 minutes. The structure isn't that complicated once you know what you're looking at." She set down her pen. "Daniel, what exactly did you do?" "Before the maintenance work." He met her eyes. "Infrastructure resilience," he said. "Which means, it means finding where large, complex systems are vulnerable," he said, "and fixing them before they fail." She looked at him for another long moment. Then she smiled, not the careful boardroom smile he had seen before. Something with more warmth in it than he expected. "I should have looked harder at your resume," she said. "I left most of it off." "I know." She closed the folder. "Which is something we are going to need to address." He had not planned on any of this being useful again. That was the honest admission. Not that he had forgotten, he had not forgotten. The knowledge was simply banked, sitting in the way that old knowledge sits, present but unlit. He had looked at Lily every day for 4 years and thought, "This is the job. This is the work that matters." And it was true. It remained true. But it was not the only truth, and he had been treating it as though it were. Which was its own kind of narrowing. Sophia was watching him think. She had a quality of patience that was distinct from stillness. She wasn't passive, she was deliberate, choosing to wait because she understood that pressure often produced worse results than space. "The meridian angle," she said. "Can you formalize that analysis? Give me 3 hours and a proper spreadsheet. Marcus will set you up." He worked until 7 in the evening. By the time he was done, the analysis was clean and precise, and documented in a way that a board member with fiduciary responsibility would not be able to ignore or misread. Sophia read it, standing at her desk, still in her jacket, and when she finished, she set it down very carefully. "This," she said, "is excellent work." He shrugged. "Don't do that," she said. "Don't do what?" "Minimize it." She looked at him directly. "You are very good at this. You have been very good at this while fixing elevators and replacing light fixtures, which is its own kind of stubbornness." He said nothing. "I'm not criticizing the last 4 years," she said. "You did what Lily needed. But Lily is 7 now, and I think you are allowed to be more than one thing." He thought about that on the drive home. with Lily asleep in the back seat, still wearing the paper crown from the birthday party. Claire came to his apartment on a Saturday morning. He had told her, by text, that she could. He had spent 4 days deciding how he felt about that, and concluded that he could either spend more time deciding or he could open the door. And opening the door seemed more honest. She brought coffee. He had not specified, but she remembered black, 1 sugar, and held the cup out at the door like a small offering. Lily was at a birthday party until noon. They sat at his kitchen table. The apartment was not much, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that had been modernized sometime in the last decade in ways that were functional but not attractive, a window that looked onto an alley. But it was clean. Every surface was clear. The refrigerator had a drawing of a horse taped to it. Lily's, labeled in careful, childish letters. Horsey. A shelf above the television held 4 photographs. Lily as an infant. Lily at age 3 in a winter coat. Lily missing a front tooth, and one of Daniel's mother, who had died the year before Lily was born. Claire looked at the shelf for a moment. She said nothing about it. "I want to ask you something," Daniel said. "If this what Sophia has planned, if it works, if your father is defanged, or whatever the outcome is." He held the coffee cup with both hands. "What do you want?" "Not what becomes possible. What do you want?" She was quiet for a moment. "I want to stop making decisions out of fear," she said. "I spent a long time doing that. The decision to leave you was the biggest one. But it wasn't the only one." She looked at him directly. "I want to be in one place. I've been in 4 cities in 4 years, which sounds like freedom and is actually just running." A pause. "I would like to stop running." He nodded slowly. "And the other question," he said. She knew what he meant without him saying it. "I don't know how to answer it quickly," she said. "I know that whatever I say, it has to be earned." Not said. Earned. She held his gaze. "I know that Lily is yours, completely, and I am not asking for anything from that. I'm asking if we start from where we are, today, whether that's a beginning or whether I'm here to close a door." He was quiet for a while. Somewhere in the alley outside, a delivery truck was making that distinctive backup beep. "You're not here to close a door," he said. She exhaled slowly. "Okay," she said. "But slowly," he said. "Yes," she said. Slowly. The board meeting of Donovan Capital took place on a Tuesday in the Marble and Glass Tower in Midtown, that Warren Donovan had moved into 3 years ago after deciding his previous offices weren't sufficiently central. Sophia did not attend. Her presence would have been too conspicuous, too direct. Instead, she sent Marcus with a sealed envelope to be delivered to each of the 3 relevant board members before the meeting began. The envelopes contained 6 pages of documentation. The Meridian Holdings exposure. 2 legal memoranda from a firm that was not affiliated with Donovan in any way. A copy of communications between Warren Donovan and a licensing authority dated 4 years ago, which were, if read carefully, suggestive of contact that should not have occurred. Daniel sat in Sophia's conference room and watched the clock. At 10:14 a.m., his phone buzzed. "Sophia, delivered." At 11:02 a.m., meeting has been recessed. Unusual. At 11:47 a.m., they asked him to step out of the room. He stood up, walked to the window. The city was doing its usual thing, ordinary, enormous, indifferent. His phone buzzed again at 12:09 p.m. Not Sophia this time. An unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Mercer." The voice was older, precise. The kind of voice that had never learned to accommodate interruption. He recognized it from description alone. "Mr. Donovan," he said. A pause. "You've involved yourself in something that doesn't concern you," Warren Donovan said. "I disagree. You're a maintenance technician." "I'm a licensed systems engineer," Daniel said. The license was delayed, not denied. A pause. "You should have finished the job." A longer pause. "What do you want?" Donovan asked. The tone had shifted, not softened, but recalibrated. The tone of a man who is reassessing an opponent he had underestimated. "I want you to withdraw the restructuring proposal," Daniel said. "I want the pressure on Claire to stop. Completely. Not reduced, stopped. And I want the Meridian situation addressed appropriately, which I think you'll find the board is now strongly motivated to request." Silence. "And if I don't?" "Then the documentation goes to the relevant regulatory bodies. The licensing authority receives a formal complaint with supporting evidence, and the 3 board members who are, to be clear, already alarmed, have a very easy decision to make about their fiduciary responsibility." A very long pause. "My daughter made her position clear to you?" Donovan asked. "Your daughter," Daniel said carefully, "made her own position clear to herself." Another pause. "You're protecting her," Donovan said. The assessment in his voice was somewhere between calculation and something almost like recognition. "Yes," Daniel said. "She doesn't need." "Mr. Donovan," Daniel said, respectfully, "that is not your determination to make." The longest pause yet. When Warren Donovan spoke again, his voice had lost some of its architecture. "My daughter," he said, "is the most important thing in my life. I need you to understand that was the basis for every—" "I understand the basis," Daniel said. "The basis was love, and the execution was control, and you lost the ability to tell the difference a long time ago." He kept his voice level. "No heat in it. I'm not your enemy. I am asking you to step back." The line was quiet for almost a full minute. "I'll speak to the board," Donovan said. "Yes," Daniel said. "I think that's right." The line went dead. He stood at the window for a long time. His phone buzzed. "Sophia." "He's gone back in." "What happened?" He typed, "He's going to step back." Her reply took 30 seconds. "How do you know?" He looked at the city. "Because he's not a monster," he typed. "He's just someone who convinced himself his way of loving people was the same as protecting them." A pause. Then, "That's either very wise or very naive." He put the phone in his pocket. Maybe both, he thought. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday morning that was cold and clear in the way of early autumn, Daniel Mercer stood in the kitchen of his apartment making pancakes. Lily was at the table. She had set up a small courtroom for her stuffed animals and was delivering what appeared to be a verdict on the rabbit's behavior the previous week. The rabbit was being sentenced to 5 minutes in the corner. The rabbit accepted this with the equanimity of the unjustly accused. The knock at the door came at 9:20. He opened it. Claire stood in the hallway with 2 coffees and a paper bag that smelled like bakery. "I brought croissants," she said. "I hope that's okay." "It's more than okay," he said. He stepped back to let her in. She came through the door slowly, not hesitantly, but with a kind of care. The way you enter a space you've been invited into, and you want to honor the invitation. Lily looked up from the courtroom proceedings. "You're Claire," she said. "I am," Claire said. "Dad talks about you now," Lily said, with the devastating candor of 7-year-olds everywhere. Daniel said nothing, because there was nothing that wouldn't make it worse. Claire set the coffees on the counter. "Does he?" "He says you used to know each other." "That's right. He says sometimes people get separated, and then they find each other again." Lily considered this. "Like in a store." "Something like that," Claire said. "I got lost in a store once," Lily said. "I was by the cereal. There was a lot of cereal. And then there was a man in a vest who helped me find Dad." She paused. "He was nice, but he smelled a little bit like the cat lady." Daniel put a plate of pancakes on the table. "Eat," he said. Lily returned to her judicial proceedings. Claire picked up her coffee. She stood beside him at the counter, and they were quiet for a moment, the easy kind of quiet. "How's Sophia?" she asked. "She called yesterday. She says the board has requested an independent audit of Donovan Capital. Your father has retained counsel." He paused. "She also said she's been thinking about offering me a role." Claire looked at him. What kind of role? Infrastructure analysis. The kind of work she needs done and doesn't currently have the right person for. He turned the heat down on the pan. It would involve going back to the kind of work I was doing before. Different environment. How do you feel about that? He thought about it honestly. Like a room I closed off and haven't been in, he said. And now someone has opened the window. She was quiet. Scary? She asked. A little. He looked at Lily, who was now issuing a formal apology on behalf of the rabbit to the other animals. But less than it would have been a month ago. Claire looked at Lily too. She's extraordinary, she said quietly. She gets it from somewhere, he said, and I'm willing to accept partial credit. Claire almost smiled. Modest. Accurate. The day went slowly and well. They ate pancakes. They walked to the park 3 blocks over Lily between them, holding Daniel's hand on the left, and then, after a negotiation conducted entirely in sidelong glances, Claire's hand on the right. The park was full of leaves. Lily found the largest pile available and applied herself to it with full commitment. They sat on a bench and watched her. I owe you an apology, Claire said. You've already, a real one. Not an explanation. She turned to face him. I made a decision that wasn't mine to make. I chose for you because I was afraid of what you'd choose, and that is regardless of the outcome a form of disrespect. I should have told you. I should have let you decide. She held his gaze. He looked at her. I know, he said. Is that all? What else do you need me to say? She shook her head slightly. Nothing. She stopped. I expected more anger. I had 4 years of anger, he said. I'm out of inventory. She looked at the park. Lily had recruited another child into the leaf pile project, and they were working together with the focused energy of engineers on a deadline. I want to know her, Claire said softly. I'm not asking for anything in particular. I want to be allowed to know her. He watched his daughter. She already held your rabbit, he said. I noticed that. That's her highest form of trust. I'll take it seriously, she said. He leaned back on the bench. The autumn light was the kind that makes everything look like a memory even while it's happening. Slowly, he said. Slowly, she agreed. Lily looked up from the leaf pile and waved at them. They both waved back. That evening, after Lily was asleep, the rabbit safely positioned beside her, the courtroom animals returned to their shelf. Daniel sat on the couch with the lamp on and the rest of the apartment dark. He thought about Sophia Wentworth. He sent her a message. Thank you. Not just for the dinner. Her reply came 11 minutes later. I told you I don't forget things. He smiled at his phone. Why did you wait so long? A pause. Then, because I needed to understand my own reasons before I acted on them. I didn't want to fix this for myself. I wanted to fix it for you. He thought about that. Another pause. Longer. I think I managed both, she wrote. I had a conversation with Warren Donovan's lawyers today. There's something from 7 years ago that I should have addressed at the time, a deal that cost my company significantly. I stayed quiet because I wasn't certain enough. I should have been braver. A pause. Sometimes we stay quiet to protect ourselves, and we call it protecting other people. I was guilty of the same thing I blamed Warren for, just at a different scale. He read it twice. Are you okay? He wrote. Yes. A beat. Better, actually. Accountability is uncomfortable and also clarifying. He set the phone down, looked at the dark room. The drawing on the refrigerator was visible from where he sat the horse, labeled Horsey in large, serious letters. He thought about the person he had been before the careful life, the version of himself that had not been set aside so much as compressed, pushed down by circumstance and grief, and the daily necessity of caring for a small person who needed everything he had. He was still that person. He was also this one. Both of them could be true at the same time. He turned off the lamp. Outside, the city continued its ordinary enormousness. The lights, the traffic, the 10,000 separate lives moving in parallel, each one carrying something that mattered intensely to the person inside it. Lily slept. The rabbit kept watch. Daniel went to bed. For the first time in a long time, he fell asleep quickly. 3 months later, in a conference room on the 43rd floor of the Caldwell Building, Daniel Mercer signed a contract. Sophia Wentworth witnessed it. The pen was expensive and the coffee was very good. That evening, he picked up Lily from school. "Dad," she said, climbing into the car. "Claire is coming for dinner, right?" "Yes," he said. "Good," Lily said. She settled into her seat with the rabbit on her lap. "I have more questions for her." "About what?" "Rabbits," Lily said, "and other things." He drove home through the city in the early dark, the lights coming on one by one. He did not think about the past. He thought about dinner.